Welcome to Off Panel, Sketch.com's weekly podcast. This week's episode is a special edition from the recent Emerald City ComiCon, and it's a conversation with Saga's artist Fiona Staples about her work on that book, Archie, and her art process overall. So Fiona, as I mentioned before we started, you are, your line's fairly substantial, and when I first discovered your work, it was on North 40, which you actually got nominated for an Eisner for. So
yeah, 2011.
Yeah,
or so.
I think it was according to the internet, which I was googling beforehand, it was 2009, 2010.
Right, that's when I did the series.
But I was really curious, how did you first how did you first discover you wanted to apply your art to comics? Why was that the medium you wanted to work in?
I sort of discovered that in high school, which is when I became interested in comics at all.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't really read them much before.
Right.
Other than, kid stuff like Archie and Tintin. But I started reading monthly comics in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I was sort of starting to look at colleges and wondering what I was going to do with my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of my big impractical dream.
Mm-hmm. So what were the first comics that were kind of drawing your eye past Archie and all that?
Well, there's this girl in my math class who brought a bunch of Rising Stars
to
class,
yeah.
and we just would share those in the back of the classroom. And I got hooked on Rising Stars and went to the comic store in the mall, and I was like, do you have anything else like Rising Stars?
Yeah.
And it was a Top Cow book, so the guy just pointed me towards the Top Cow section.
So you're like, I guess I'll read Witchblade now.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, Fathom, that looks, that's really pretty art.
Yeah.
I was like 16 or 17, so I guess beautiful women wearing shell bikinis really appealed to me.
That was the niche you started in?
I just got really into all the Top Cow stuff because that's what I was pointed towards.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the funny things. I did an article on creator-owned comics and kind of how they've gotten so big lately. And I talked to Faith Erin Hicks, a cartoonist and everything, and she was talking about how when she was, that age, she would go into a comic shop and she just didn't really know where to start, and they didn't really have anywhere to point her. Mm-hmm. So I think it's kind of cool that you actually found something you connected with at that age, even if it was shell bikinis.
Yeah. The employee there, Gerald Garcia, is actually a really excellent artist and a good, an important member of the Calgary comics community, which I didn't know at the time. But he kind of mentored me. I ended up working at that shop while I was in college. And I would talk about art with Gerald, and he founded a message board for local creators. Message boards were a thing at the time. That was sort of a hub for Alberta comic creators called Maple Inc. And that was where I started finding my first collaborators, and we would put work up there for each other to crit and get feedback on. And, writers and artists would hook up and start working on projects.
I was actually talking to my friend earlier who's a budding artist in her own right. And one of the things we were talking about is it is kind of, it's interesting to it's difficult for artists of all varieties to kind of break into whatever industry, whether or not it's natural sciences art or it's comic art or things like that. How do you find your path into it? And it's cool that it's a message board that got you there, a community of people who have common interests that first start finding your collaborators and everything. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I didn't know for sure that I was going to end up doing comics as a career because the only thing people told me was how hard it was. And it was almost impossible to make a living doing comics, particularly indie comics, which is the direction I was headed in. I knew I wanted to make them. I didn't think I would make money at it.
Right.
But I was in college and I was kind of exploring my options. I thought, well, maybe I can support myself by doing freelance design work.
Right.
One of my first freelance clients was a local book publisher. So I was doing a lot of, just book covers and layouts, stuff like that. And just random illustration gigs and working on indie comics at the same time.
Right. Well, that was, I think is it surreal for you, the whole Saga experience? Because you're saying, you thought you were going to move into indie comics, and now you're doing, Saga isn't just a popular book, it's an extremely meaningful book to so many people. And is that ever surreal to talk to people and see the response you get? Or have you gotten past that part?
Yeah, it's still a little bit jarring.
Right.
Because these people are all wonderful.
Yeah.
All the readers that I meet are super nice.
Yeah.
And really fun and interesting to talk to. So I love meeting them at conventions. But there's a massive disconnect between the crowd here at shows the awards that we get, the chatter about the series online, and then just like what I do alone in my studio.
I know. Yeah, it's so interesting because it's like it is a very solitary job.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to connect the two. Like, this is a direct result of what I do all day long by myself at my computer.
Yeah. So, and you do work digitally, right?
Yeah.
So what do you, like, what are the tools you use and everything?
Well, I use a Wacom Cintiq. I have the 21 UX model, which is about 7 years old now. A desktop iMac.
Okay.
And I do all my inking in Manga Studio 5, and I use Photoshop for colors.
So one of the things I think, like, so I was showing my friend Saga number 34's cover earlier, and I think that is genuinely one of the best covers I've seen in forever. And it's not just because Goose is like the most adorable character that's ever existed in comics, but like one of the things I think is really amazing about your art is the fact that you work digitally, but you have such an incredible like painterly quality to your colors and everything like that. Like what is your approach for like a cover like that? Like where do you start, and how do you like, do you have like a bunch of drafts you put together, or do you just kind of have a good vision as to what you're getting into right from the start?
Well, it starts with Brian telling me which character we want to feature, because at the point in time where I'm doing the cover, I have no idea what the issue's going to be about.
Yeah, so you haven't even seen a script
what the
at that
next issue
point?
is going to be about. No, not at all.
Oh, wow.
Not even close.
Yeah.
I'm still like at least 3 issues behind.
Wow.
Whatever the cover is for. So he'll just be like, we're going to feature Goose this time.
You're like, okay.
And he's on this planet. Or like, this will be Gwendolyn and Sophie on a sort of savannah like terrain. And then I'll just do whatever. In the beginning I would do like thumbnails for him to look at, but now I just go straight to final art, and he can either take it or leave it.
Well, I mean, you guys have been doing this for a while now. I mean, you, like, what issue is it on? Is 35 was the most recent that was released?
Yeah, I just finished up 36, which is our last one before the break, and that comes out at the end of this month.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have been doing it for a while, so I guess you guys are like a well-oiled machine now, but
yeah.
I think it is really cool, though, that, like, that you do all of the work yourself. You're doing the coloring, you're doing everything like that. But how does that like inform your process? Like, I was talking to Mitch Gerrits yesterday, and he colors himself too.
Yeah.
And he was talking.
And he has a much tighter deadline than I do. Like, his schedule doesn't have breaks built in.
I know, it's crazy, but
he does an actual monthly comic.
But he was talking about how, because he colors himself, he approaches like the pencils and the ink process like a little bit different, because he knows the colors are going to like kind of like, he can approach those differently maybe than if somebody else was coloring him. Is that the same thing for you?
Yeah, definitely. Because I don't even ink everything. I
only
ink the figures, and then the backgrounds are sort of painted in, either before or after the figures. So if I handed my inks to a colorist, it would just be like 4 lone figures floating on a blank page.
Can you draw some people back there with the colors?
Yeah, because when I do the backgrounds and stuff, I just sort of roughly pencil them in, or I do a perspective grid, and then I paint over that. So the colors are really integrated into the process. It's not like a separate step that I could hand off to someone else. Right,
and that was one of the things he was talking about, is like the actual act of having to try to explain like everything that he's like doing with his colors to somebody else would almost like, it would be kind of, it would take more time than almost doing them himself. Which is
exactly. Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. I'd never really thought of it like that.
Yeah, I did a few non-Saga comics last year. I did 3 issues of Archie, and I did an issue of Trick or Treat. And I thought the only way I can fit this extra stuff into my schedule is if I don't color it, if I just do inks. And it took almost as long.
Yeah. You had, it was Andre, whose last name, I always call him Astrobrain because that's his name on Twitter, and it just makes it easier.
Yeah, Andre Simenovich.
Yeah, okay. And he was coloring you, right? Oh, that's like...
Yeah, and Jose Villarrubia colored Trick or Treat.
Oh. Jose Villarubia is
awesome.
amazing.
Yeah.
Not that Andre isn't, but I mean, Jose Villarubia is like legendary.
Both legends, yeah.
So, and I did want to talk to you about Archie, because I think it's kind of amazing when, one of the first comics you read was Archie. It was like one of the things that got you into it. When you were first offered that, I mean, I know you, and you were very busy. Like, Saga is, how many issues do you do a year? Like 8 to 10? Or?
Yeah, 8 or 9.
8 or 9.
It averages out to, yeah.
Was it like an immediate yes for you, or did you have to really think about it because of the schedule?
Yeah, no, it wasn't an immediate yes. I didn't know if I could fit it in, and I didn't know if they should even relaunch Archie. Like, I wasn't sold on the idea.
Like, I don't know, guys. I've been reading this for a long time.
No one wants this. Come on. Just leave it as it is.
Do you still read Archie?
Yeah, I've kept up with the series that Mark is writing, and
Oh,
Veronica
okay.
Fish is now drawing, and the Jughead spinoff.
No,
Well, I shouldn't
meant
call
like
it a spinoff, the Jughead series.
I meant like things like the Double Digest and things like that.
Yeah, my mom still gives me one for Christmas. It's a sort of a tradition now.
That's amazing. I actually have, for some reason, for a long time, I had friends that all were convinced that I was obsessed. Like, I loved elephants. And I have no idea where that came from. So for years, people would just give me elephants. Actually, she may have given me one. I don't know. She did give me one.
Just
She's
like
nodding.
items shaped like elephants?
Yeah,
Or
like
stuffed animals?
like a friend would go to Costa Rica and they would get like a statue of an elephant. They're like, "You love elephants."
Okay.
I'm like, "Okay."
They're not native to Alaska.
They're definitely not native to Alaska. We have one or two, but I don't think they really like it there, if I'm being totally honest.
Yeah.
But it is funny how like those traditions happen, and you're just like, I'm just gonna go with it. I'm gonna keep getting these Archie comics. But was it kind of? I mean, as a person who initially was like, I don't know about this. Should you really be relaunching Archie? Was it kind of? Was a little mind blowing as a fan, and also somebody who was doing this. It was a big thing. I mean, you're relaunching Archie. Like, was that something that was particularly meaningful to you as a person, as an artist, also?
Yeah, it was. The pressure was intense.
Yeah.
Because I was like, what if I'm the person that screws up Archie?
Yeah,
and then I'm
you're
like, what if I
defining this
say
new
no
vision.
and they get someone else and they do an even worse job? Then how will I feel?
I should have done Archie.
What if they hire someone that doesn't even like Archie? And I love Archie, so I can just, do my best and see what happens.
So it was like your personal responsibility to do it. You had to do it to make sure that nobody else would be like, okay,
It was
somebody
my
that
calling.
loves it was your comic book destiny to do Archie.
No, but I wasn't really sold on it until I talked to Mark Waid and he told me all of his ideas for the series. And then I was like, oh yeah, actually this makes a lot of sense. And Mark and the Archie publishers are smarter than me and they know what they're doing. This is a good idea after all.
Okay, so this is my moment of admission. I was one of those skeptical people who had never read Archie before, and I was like, Archie? Why would I read Archie? And then I read that, and I was like, why didn't I read Archie? Archie's awesome.
Archie always has been awesome. Yeah, that's why we wanted to change as little as possible.
But that's the funny thing, though, is because I think there are a lot of people, not like, I mean, Archie's obviously a legend, but like, I think there's a lot of people like me that just kind of needed that push, having Fiona Staples and Mark Waid on the book to like get into it for the first time.
Yeah, well, they wanted to court the direct market.
Right.
Basically, 'cause they sell amazingly at bookstores and grocery stores and everywhere other than comic book stores.
Yeah.
So.
But one of the things that I really like about your art is you have such great feel for characters. So your character acting is really fantastic. And, you definitely saw that a lot in your Archie run, but you see it all the time in Saga. Like, what is your approach? Do you make Ben, like, take pictures all the time? Do you have, like...
No, I do it.
You do?
He's at work all day. I have to rely on myself, my own modeling skills. But yeah, first of all, I try to... well, now that I have the choice, only do jobs where I do actually have a feel for the characters and some degree of familiarity with them, or a new thing like Saga where I can make them up.
Right. And you get a lot of challenges for making up the characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if I was doing just a random superhero book or something that I don't really know, I don't think it would be as effective. Because I have to know who the characters are. And, the writer has so much to do with that. They have to be written in such a way that I get a feel for them and believe that they're people before I can, communicate that on the page.
You have to know them before you can, like, bring their visual identity to life, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and it helps, like, obviously with Archie, you had, like, the baked-in relationship with them.
Yeah.
But how much does, like, working with, like, somebody like Brian, who obviously has a really great voice for character, or like Mark, who's, been working in comics probably longer than I've been alive. I apologize, Mark, if that is. But anyways, like, how does that change it? Like, working with them, like, do those two having such strong character voices help you really understand the characters more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think working with, like, a great writer like Brian or Mark helps an artist do their best work, for sure, because there's so much there in the script for you to bring out and for you to put on the page. That the final product is just automatically going to be better.
Right. Yeah.
I've had some scripts where it was just a mess kind of like a mess of ideas. The pacing was bad. There's like no real characterization. It's just sort of a bunch of disjointed ideas, and there's really nothing for you to work with.
Right.
Like, you try to do your best, but you can't make these characters lovable if you don't know who they are, or if they don't have any real personality. You can't make the action exciting if there's no reason for any of it to happen.
Right, exactly. Well, and that's one of the things that I think, because there's a lot of times people talk about how like people talk about writers first and stuff like that, and like I'm very friendly with Declan Shalvey, and he's always talking about like the art credit stuff. And
big artist advocate, yeah.
Yes, very big artist advocate. And anyways, but I think one of the things that people often forget is the thing that makes comics so amazing is like the marriage of the writing and the art. And it's like, you know, you can't do your job unless you have like a good base to work from for the characters. Just like Brian really couldn't work. Like if he was telling, you know, like the same story with Alana and Marco and everybody else, and he had an artist who wasn't doing the character acting and didn't bring the heart to the page that you do, like the book just wouldn't work as well. And it is interesting, like that marriage is really where the magic of comics happens.
Yeah, I think it's important for the artist to really read the script and really get a feel for. I know that sounds obvious, but I don't think everyone does it. Just like give it a careful read and really try to understand what the writer's trying to say and what they're trying to create.
I was talking to an artist recently, and they told me that it was Javier Rodriguez who does Spider-Woman, and he was saying I think he said he reads the script 3 times before he even, you know, starts thinking about how he's going to approach it visually, because he really wants to understand what the writer in the script is going for, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
So the last question I had for you was, I'm really curious. So when you first started on Saga, that was like, I guess you could say like North 40. You did the covers for, was it covers for DV8, Gods
That's
and
right.
Monsters, and you had done, was it Mystery Society with Steve Niles?
That's what I did after my Wildstorm stuff.
Yeah. So, but like Saga was like your first big ongoing project. How do you feel like you've evolved, like for the like since you first got started on Saga? Like, do you feel like you've personally seen your own evolution on the page, or are you just too locked in at the studio to really know that?
It's hard to say. Like, I think we tend to remember our own stuff badly, and I never really want to crack open an issue.
You don't look back
or something like that. But recently, I was looking at an old trade of Mystery Society, and I was like, "This isn't all that bad." And I don't know. I wonder if I would do it differently if I did it today. I think it would look pretty different, but I don't know if I've evolved in any concrete way.
I know. It's funny because like I can say in a general sense that I feel like, you know, your work looks. I mean, I love North 40. I thought that was a great book, and like you were the main reason why I picked up that book. And I feel like your art has improved in like real ways since then, but it's really hard to say specifics. I think that's like the interesting part about art is it's like, even though there's like a real tangential element to it, there's like a feel base to it, and it's kind of hard to really place that.
And I'm doing Saga in sort of a different style and a different technique than anything I've done before. So it may be more of a lateral move.
Well, thank you so much for the chat, Fiona. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this week's special edition episode of Off Panel from Sketch.com. You can find this week's guest, Fiona Staples, on Twitter at Fiona Staples, on Tumblr at fionastaples.tumblr.com, and her work in Saga with Brian K. Vaughan at Image Comics. You can find more sketch content at Sketched. That's SKTCHD.com. Follow us on Twitter at SketchComic. Like us on Facebook at /Sketched. And if you're an iTunes listener, give us a rating or review. Thanks for listening, and tune in later this week for another episode from Emerald City ComiCon.